Started again. We have Heidi Metzler presenting a talk entitled Encapsulate and Exfiltrate Exploiting RCE via DNS. Please give Heidi a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yes. Great. Okay, welcome to my talk. I'd like to thank the organizers of BSidesBoulder 2024. This has been an awesome event so far, and I've attended so many cool talks. Thanks also to the sponsors. We are in the Rule 4 room, which is pretty cool. And thank you, attendees, for deciding to spend your Friday at a BSides conference. This is super cool. So today, welcome to my talk. This is Encapsulate and Exfiltrate. Today we'll be discussing exploiting remote code execution vulnerabilities via DNS. My name is Heidi Metzler. I work in application security. I'm a senior security engineer at Summit Security Group. This is a Portland-based security consultancy. So 90% of the work that I do is application related. So whether that's web applications or mobile applications or thick clients or IoT setups or APIs, that's the sort of stuff that I test day in and day out. And today I'm going to be talking about what I consider to be the crown jewel of application security vulnerabilities, remote code execution. If an application is a castle and I find a remote code execution in it, then the castle is mine. I win. I can do anything that the application can do and have any access that that user can have. So if the application is like for a bank or something like that, and there are bank balances and customer number and customer information, not only could you do something like deploy ransomware, you could just take down the site with the denial of service type of exploit. You could exfiltrate all of the data, you could change the balances, you could control money, you could steal information, do whatever you wanted. You could also set up subdomains, and you could potentially use the bank's good name to do nefarious things and widen your access. There's also something called scope change in the CVSS rating system, which is when you find a vulnerability in one type of system, but this changes, you're no longer testing an application, the vulnerability is no longer in the application, it changes the scope to like being within an internal network or something like that. So today the plan is, I'm going to give some background about remote code execution and DNS, and then we're going to talk about the problem. So these days, a lot of organizations have security solutions, EDR, like CrowdStrike or Sophos or other technologies deployed with their environment. In case there is this type of bug, it will help protect the infrastructure, or so you might think. The problem is that those solutions are deployed in those environments, and you might want to get around them. So the solution will be leveraging DNS to exfiltrate your payloads. I used to think that DNS lookups were pretty silly and just good for like demonstrating to clients that remote code execution vulnerabilities exist with their environments, but I didn't think that you could get very far with them. Due to a recent experience, I've discovered that you actually can get quite far with them, and they're a lot quieter. By quieter, I mean it's not like a reverse shell or something like that, where it's going to be really noisy and set off alarm bells and get shut down really quickly. It's quiet. It allows you to exfiltrate a lot of information. So as it turns out, you're only going to be limited by the size of a DNS lookup, your command line skills, and your creativity. So, oh yes, we're also going to have a demo or a mini CTF. How many people in here are red teamers or pen testers or do that sort of work? Great, great. Bryce, you didn't raise your hand, but I know you're there. Wonderful. And for the rest of you, I hope that this will present an opportunity for you to see what a remote code execution vulnerability is like and have the opportunity to exploit it yourself on your phone or your computer, whatever you have with you. We will briefly touch on prevention towards the end of the presentation, because I know a lot of you are responsible for securing your environments. Okay, so Here's the first background section. What is remote execution and why should you care? So As Matt and Austin discussed earlier in their fascinating talk, various technologies have these vulnerabilities within them. And when these vulnerabilities are found, people can exploit them and gain access long-term. They were discovering how nation-state actors were able to do this, and that was a really cool talk. This has to do with exactly that type of vulnerability. It's usually in applications a result of unsafe inclusion of user-supplied input and back-end commands. You find it in file manipulation operations like uploads or downloads. If someone is uploading files into the web root of an application and they can upload, say, a PHP file or another executable type, then they can just put their code in their upload, and when they render the page, their code will be executed. Another one is if you can change the name of a file or something like that, and that's done on the back end, and you can include special characters in those commands. You may be able to do something interesting there. And if you're downloading files, sometimes the names of files are not included safely in back-end commands. Another place is when you're entering an email address so that the server can use a command line utility to send you an email. And if output encoding is not done correctly there, then it will be a problem. So to summarize, remote code execution is your code running on somebody else's machine. You find it via fuzzing. There are a few different ways that when you're fuzzing, you might look for them. You might try to do DNS lookups, just simple ones to reach out to a server that you control. And then if you get a DNS hit on there and it's the payload that you put in there, then you know that it's there, or via code review. So now I'm going to go on a small rant about how I believe that application security testing should be done. When folks provide us during an assessment with their code, we can actually search for the vulnerabilities that we're looking for much more easily. Applications can be written in a variety of different languages, and many of those languages will let you execute commands on the back end. If you catch an application putting user-supplied input into those commands, it's really easy to do. Another one is looking for cross-site scripting vulnerabilities or SQL injection vulnerabilities. Those can also be helped by doing code review. So once you've found a remote code execution vulnerability, what can you do with it? That depends entirely on the privileges of the user that's running the process you're injecting into. So if you're just the standard user on an Apache web server, I believe it's the data-www user. If you are running an application in the confines of a container, oftentimes the container default account is the root account. So if you find a remote code execution vulnerability on those, then you have extra special powers. Okay, so that's it for remote code execution. Now we're going to be chatting about DNS. DNS is the phone book of the internet, and it maps domain names like reddit.coms to an IP address. It's useful because the way that the DNS system works is you ask a question to your DNS server, and then that triggers a series of queries that ends up wherever the end server is located. And then the IP address corresponding to that is sent back to you. The important thing is that whatever you look up arrives at where you're asking it to. So for us, it's going to be useful because we can use it to exfiltrate our payloads after they've been evaluated in whichever environment we found the bug in. Okay, so as we discussed a few minutes ago, the problem is that there are security solutions that shut down reverse shells, and it happens pretty quickly. So there are canned exploits, there are Metasploit modules you can use to exploit remote code execution bugs once you've found them, but they're pretty noisy, and these security solutions, they find them, and they ruin your good time as a security tester. It's a great thing that they exist, but there are other ways to get around them. You need another way to get around them, and there are a lot of legitimate reasons why an application will do DNS lookups. I used to think that DNS lookups were just kind of a silly way of demonstrating to our clients that there was a problem in their environment, but you can really do a lot more with them. And so they don't have to just be dull. You can fit into one single DNS lookup a lot of information. You can fit in 253 characters total. You'll need to separate them into parts. For example, only 63 characters can be in a subdomain. And you can see better details in the RFC, which is 1035, or if you just look it up on the internet, you'll be directed to a very helpful Stack Overflow article. Okay, so that's enough for the talk so far. Now we're going to do a demo. If you have your phone on you, I encourage you to do this even if you have absolutely no experience whatsoever with application security. Go to jimthecat.com. And if the page isn't coming up for you, I don't know, just try refreshing. And it's an HTTP. I built this a couple days ago, and you can tell that this wasn't really made by a web designer, and it has limited functionality, but it serves its intended purpose. So there are two vulnerabilities on this site. If anybody thinks they've found either of them, if they could raise their hand, that would be really helpful. One of them is a cross-site scripting vulnerability, and the other one is a remote code execution vulnerability. So a few minutes ago, we were talking about how to detect vulnerabilities or remote code execution vulnerabilities within an application. I don't think I'm going to give too much away when I say that this is running on a Linux server. It's an Apache server, and it's hosted by DigitalOcean. You could find that information yourself if you look at the server responses, I'm sure. Does anybody know how to look for example, a cross-site scripting vulnerability? Yep, absolutely. So are there any places on here where input is being requested? Yep, absolutely. Has anybody found a cross-site scripting vulnerability? Does anybody have a proof of concept to show me? Please. Yeah?
Open script tag.
Okay, let's see that in action. Okay, so it wants, wait a second. What are you talking about? It's asking for an email address. So what's the email address you just gave me? Okay, and so this is a vulnerability. So what's going to happen when I click subscribe? Ta-da! Okay, excellent. So you can see in the URL up above, email equals script open tag alert parentheses 1 close script tag. This is a wonderful traditional proof of concept for a cross-site scripting vulnerability. Is it reflected or is it stored? Perfect. Very good. Okay. If a normal user, somebody who just, does things when they're told is entered, it could just be, like Heidi at BSidesBoulder.com, subscribe, and usually it would just output and give it whatever you put into it. The problem with this application is that it is output encoding is not being done correctly. So it's outputting characters that become a part of the page, and they're rendered into JavaScript. You could also do, let's see here. Does anybody have a more creative payload? Let's do document domain. Okay, and now it's giving you back the domain of the site on which the code is running. That can be useful because sometimes cross-site scripting bugs are in places you don't actually think they are. Lovely. Great. So has anybody done any more exploring on the site, and has anybody else found, say, a different type of vulnerability, a remote code execution vulnerability?
The site name, put it in.
Okay, so how do I find this vulnerability? Okay, site name competition, let's see here. I am always looking to expand my territory, whether it's claiming a new box or creating a site. Help me pick a new domain, and I'll check if it's available for purchase. Okay, great. So how does this help me run code on a remote server? Oh, you did? So which quote? The back quote, okay. The back tick, yeah, I don't know, whatever it is, yeah. Oh, a webhook to a site that you control? Clever. That's very good. That's the whole point of this. Okay, so that's wonderful. Another way that you could find it, okay, so enter site name here, you submit it, and Jim is going to check and see if it's available for purchase. So he's going to actually be doing an NS lookup, doing some sort of a domain name system lookup to that site to see if it's available for him to purchase. So ideally, you should just be doing like example.com or whatever. And then, he says that he's received your site name, or his server does rather. But because there is a remote code execution vulnerability in here, we can put in backticks and enter whatever we want. So one of the ways that you can find a remote code execution vulnerability in an application is using something like sleep. If you tell the computer to go to sleep for 5 seconds, and then when you submit that, the computer doesn't respond to you for about 5 seconds, that's a pretty good indicator that there's a bug there. So let's try it. Sleep, 5. Okay, enter, thinking. Great. Okay, so there was a bit of a pause there. Maybe it wasn't exactly 5 seconds, but it seems like there's something going on. All right, so you're right, this is currently a blind remote code execution bug, but we are now going to make it less blind. One moment, please. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain here. Okay, please turn on. Uh-oh. Oh, thank goodness. All right. Yeah, I should make more like burnt offerings to the demo gods beforehand. Always, yeah, for sure. Okay, so if you refresh your page or you just try it again, your output is now going to be a little bit different. So instead of sleep 5, we're now going to try an echo command. So echo foo, which is basically computer, print the word foo. And we're going to submit it. Aha, the output has changed. Your site name has been received, and the output is the output of an NS lookup, and it says server can't find foo. So our command has executed, our computer has said foo on the back end. So it is turned from a blind remote code execution vulnerability until, we're just emulating a situation in which you can actually see this, this foo. You could put, like foo.example.com. And then your server can't find that. In fact, you don't need to put a backtick on the end in this particular case. You can just put whatever you want to evaluate between those backticks and then send it off to your DNS server of choice. You don't need to see what's on the computer because this domain name, this NS lookup here, it's going to arrive home at your DNS server like this gentleman was able to do. What's your name? Garrett. Garrett. Like Garrett was able to do over there. That's exactly the point of this exercise. The problem with NS lookups in this particular case is that there's only a single line of information that's exported to you. So what if you want to do something more interesting? You want to like search the bash history, or you want to see if the current user has SSH to a different server or something like that. Does anybody have an idea of how you would go ahead and try to find that information and export it to your server if you've only got one finite line that you can work with? For example. Okay, cool. Let's see here. I'm gonna go back to my slides for a sec. Okay, I have some hints here. Sorry, that font is a little bit smaller. There's a lot of commands in Bash that can help you out, and if you're using Windows, they'll just be slightly different. You just need to read the docs or check Stack Overflow or ChatGPT or what have you, and they will give you the commands that you actually need to use. Head-n1 will give you the first line of a file name. Head-n-2 is going to give you the first two. There's also a corresponding command tail, so you could sort of shift the lines, ask for the first line and then the second line, and sort of grab and trim as necessary using head and tail. There's also sed. Sed tac n 3p in quotes for a file name is going to print the third line of that file. And then you can also do something like, you can look in the history and use grep to search for specific commands that the user has run before. Okay, so now I'm going to ask for some challenges, and if you guys could just find the answers to these questions, then we could solve this mystery, and then we could look at the answers together. So which user is running this application? That's very good. And how did you figure this out?
Who am I?
Who am I? Okay, who am I? So the command who am I, if you type it onto a command line, it's going to print the current user. In this case, this is being run on an application, so whichever user is running this application is going to be the name of the user that we see. So we submit it. Lo and behold, it's jim.example.com. Very good. Okay, next challenge. Does the user have privileges? How can we figure this out? Sorry? Uname? Okay. So for example, ID. -U. 1002. Is it a pseudo-or? No. Very good. Okay, we're just moving right along through these challenges. I should have put more challenges on the board, but I'm sure, with some creativity, we can still figure these things. We can find more to find out. Oops, wrong window. Are there any interesting files around? This might be a little bit trickier. So as Bryce mentioned a few minutes ago, we have ls that we could use to list some files, but then we would need to control the output so that, what if we just try ls in here? What happens? ls.example.com. There's no output. So what does this mean? Good. Yeah, it seems to be too long. The NS lookup doesn't seem to be evaluating, and nothing's taking place. Or nothing that we can see is taking place. All right, back to the site name competition. So has anybody found any interesting files? I also understand if somebody just started up a remote shell because, I'm not running CrowdStrike in this environment or something like that. You guys can do whatever you want. Please don't take down the site until, the presentation is over, though. Out of respect, I would really appreciate it. It's intended to be hacked, but it would be nice if things didn't break while I was trying to show them off. Okay.
You probably put in CD.
Okay, so CD and then CD and PWD?
Well, no, I was going to say CD. Fine.
CD.
CD, Etsy, or try to view the shadow file.
So cat Etsy. Is it shadow? Computer says no. How can we modify this so that we could get, how could we, modify this command so that we could get a single line, say the first line of this file? So head, and then what? Very good. That did not work.
Try password instead of shell.
Okay, that gave us something.
Oh, that's right, it's dot shell.
Where else can we look for interesting files?
Users home directory.
Users home directory. Okay, so ls, how do we find their home directory? Tilde. No output, so there must be more than one line. So how do we do this?
Okay.
Yep, pipe to head dash n 1 so that it's only giving us the single. Is this visible at all? Is this too small? Okay, sorry. Okay. Make bigger.
Control Shift plus. What's that?
Oh, please. Okay. Better? Okay, cool. So ls home, piping that to head tac n1. Submit. No output.
So off, you can print.
Let me. Sorry, what was that?
So you get LS.
Yep,
So right at the off,
yep.
two quotation marks.
Let's try one.
I think you have to move over.
Too many whats?
It should be single.
My bad. Is it working for you? Okay.
I'm not sure if the LS.
So which file are you looking at? What's your command?
Etc password. Then I'm feeding that to awk, and I'm doing 4, and I'm getting the SYS user.
Very nice. Who do you work for?
You wouldn't have heard of them.
Okay. I'll talk to you after class. Okay, so let's get back to our challenges. All right, we found some interesting files. How could you conceivably pivot to another server? So an application is running as an account. Sometimes accounts have access to other servers. How would you find out if your server has, remotely accessed some other server? Any thoughts?
Known host.
Sorry?
The known host file.
Known host file, okay. Pardon my mess. So for example, which command would you use?
This is actually recurring.
Yeah, this cat decided to pay me in piles of like vomited up grass and bits of kibble to hack his site. So cat, known hosts, did you say?
tilde slash .ssh slash known host.
Underscore, yeah.
Okay, does this look correct? As far as you can see?
Tilde works. Slash home gym.
Okay, we'll try home gym.
Yes, go for it, yeah.
Thank you. Some sort of error here. Something's not working quite right. Let's try ls home gym and see what the first line is. Private journal.txt. This cat's been keeping a private journal. It's not just his blog. How dare he? We should read his private journal. How would we do that? Cat? Cat the cat's journal. Okay. So cat, home, gym. Actually,
The lines, so it all
On
just
break,
comes
that's what I
out
was just thinking.
into one big blob.
You also do TR-D and then in quotes the new line.
okay. Give me the TR-D solution. So what's your command?
Yeah, so you'll want to pipe it into TR-E and then single quote.
Dash V as in Victor?
No, -D
As in Echo?
as in delete.
As a dog.
Dog, okay. TRD.
And then single quote, backslash, and Nancy.
And then what? Close the quote?
Yeah, close the quote.
Okay,
And then get rid of your head.
You need to get rid of head.
got it. The pipe as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got listing the home directory of Jim, and then TR, tag D, new lines. Someone's been doing things here. Okay, so who is AP3X? Who is it? Huh? Apex? Who's Apex? Bravo, bravo. This is wonderful. Okay, cool. So there is a flag. There is a flag in this environment, shall we say. You might want to think about solving this particular challenge, pivoting to another server in order to find that flag. So if someone could work on that, that would be awesome. In the meantime, how could we do something along the lines of exfiltrating a private key, just theoretically?
That most private keys are going to be kept in pretty known directories. So just start looking for the known ones.
Mm-hmm.
IDRSA.SSH.
Yep, perfect, good. But then, yeah, so say that we're doing that, but let's just look at the structure. We're just going to kind of cheat and look at the answers here because it takes a long time to run commands. So we are now Jim on the machine that's running the application. Apex was here, not the flag. Very nice. Okay. Private journal.txt, there's that as well. But yeah, so if we look in the directory in which the SSH, in the SSH home directory of the user, we see two files up top. I'm sorry this is so small. I'm not an expert at making things big on my screen. Basically, the ID _ ED25519, that is the private key. The corresponding public key is in the same file with the .pub at the end of it. What we want to see if we're an attacker and we can steal this private key and we know that this user can access some other servers, then we can just nab that private key and we can use their private key to access anything they might be able to access to. The problem that one might have here is that are DNS lookups case sensitive? No, they are not case sensitive. Are there characters in this that you think might be case sensitive? How could you get around that on the command line? If you were trying to export this file line by line, is there a way that you could change some of those characters or use some sort of different command encoding that's on the command line and manage to export this line by line to a server of your choice? Natalie?
Base64?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Base64 should work.
But isn't base 64 case sensitive as well?
It might also be case sensitive as well, in which case
SSH keys are already base 64.
We could try decoding it. Hex encoding, I don't know, there's so many to get around this.
Base 32 would be like letters and digits, and it's gonna be limited to.
The key's encrypted, it's not coded.
Okay, but is there a way to take bits of information out? You know, you could, it would be a real pain in the neck to try every alpha character on here and try it like, you know, both cases when you're trying to like, not brute force a private key, but having to try all of those different combinations just to gain access to a server would be a pain in the neck. So you would need to find some way with a command line that you could encode this so that it comes out the other side in a way that you could decode easily and recreate this file. What other challenges do we have? Any progress on the flag? Does anybody have my flag? Okay, keep trying. What else could we do with remote code execution? Earlier, Matt and Austin were talking about all of these fun things you could do.
I want to just curl down something and execute it. So just curl pipe to bash and then use that for persistence rather than messing around with the small window and like little bits of space I have.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great idea. Any other ideas?
You can also do something like zip up their home directory and upload it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just exfiltrate a whole mess of information. Did you raise your hand, Brett?
Yeah.
Do you have the flag?
Tar through netcat.
Tar through netcat? Yep. Could totally work.
I've seen people set up whole command and control exfiltration, like downloads through DNS as well. So you can
Yeah.
encapsulate entire offensive applications and publish them in a known DNS location. Use the queries to pull down those chunks of data and reassemble them back into the tools.
That sounds like a lot of work, but with a very pleasing result. Cool.
I think someone killed Jim the cat.
Something like what?
I think someone killed the site.
Somebody killed the site? Oh no. Try refreshing. Try clearing your cache, because that kept happening to me when I was like testing out this demo. Okay. Any luck on that flag anywhere? Nothing yet. Has anybody found out that is there a different server anywhere that Jim has accessed? Sorry, who said something?
Boombox.
Yes, Boombox. Boombox is a great place to look for flags. Okay, so I see we have about 10 minutes left in here, and so we're just going to go back to the slides and talk on prevention. But if anybody has any interesting developments, like, you know, a flag or something like that, just raise your hand and I'll get back to you. Okay, so preventing this type of vulnerability. It's very language specific. If you're writing, you know, an application in Python, your solution's going to look a little bit different than in PHP or something like that. But basically, do not include user supplied input or even user influenced input in backend commands, insofar as it could be used to exploit this type of vulnerability. I also recommend using the principle of least privilege, because if Jim had been a pseudo user on the server, then we would have owned the entire server immediately. We could have done anything that we wanted. And my final recommendation is to patch, patch, patch. It's a good mantra because, like some others have spoken about today, new vulnerabilities are being found in technologies all the time, and they need to be fixed. So in this particular case, what did I call it? Okay, so the file that is called when we're exploiting the vulnerability is sitecomp.php. Who can tell me, oh gosh, can you guys see this at all? No. No, okay. I'm just going to copy it.
Was that Jim with the squirrel?
That was showing up initially. Yeah, it was. I was playing with ChatGPT or no, not ChatGPT, but I think maybe it was Dolly too for a Christmas card. And yeah, it came up with some pretty cute pictures, actually, I have to say. Okay, so this is the content, these are the contents of the file, the PHP file that we are exploiting. This contains the bug. Where is the bug? Yes, very good. Okay, so it's taking the get parameter site and it's putting it in this variable called minnows, because Jim loves minnows. And then it is executing an NS lookup on the content of that variable. So it's just taking the user supplied input and plopping it into a command that's executed on the back end of the application. So it's blind if you can't see the output. But because these two lines here, echo output and echo some output, are not commented out, specifically this last one here, we can actually see what's going on. It's being output to the page so you can see the results of your command execution.
So in the DNS exfiltration example, you would do the 2 backticks with your command and then the dot, whatever your control domain is.
Exactly.
That would just be whatever the output was, including spaces and whatnot, or would those get encoded in some way?
They might get encoded in some way on the back end. That's why if what you are trying to exfiltrate is case sensitive, like an SSH key or something like that, you will need to, check for a basic, maybe not a base64 encoding in this case, but find some sort of encoding that you can use on the command line that you'll be able to decode on the other side when it comes out of your server. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Cool.
so if you were trying to detect this in the DNS log, you could also look for the same types of encoding.
Yeah, you could, but so we've been looking where we've been dealing with very short lines in files so far. So just a few characters each. What if the first line of the file is huge? You're gonna need to take it out in chunks. You might also need to take it out in characters if you have some sort of a security solution that's looking for hex encoded payloads or what have you that are being exfiltrated elsewhere. You might need to just take it out in smaller chunks. If someone were looking for this as a thing. But that's very creative and that's an elegant solution.
So just use an ampersand with this too for getting multiple lines.
Could do that. Like an and?
So probably just the single ampersand, just to allow for the NS lookup to fail. Give you more space.
For example?
I just did example ampersand ls/. No backticks. Slash the other way.
/
No backticks
No
required.
backticks.
Also escape out of it just with a semicolon. Run the
With a what?
semicolon after example, and then just
True.
straight up ls.
That's true.
Get rid of the ampersand.
Remove the ampersand.
Name competition, right?
Sorry?
You want the site name competition for it? Is that right?
Yeah. Am I on the wrong
This
form?
one?
That's embarrassing.
What was the other one?
Oh gosh, okay. So, example, and then ampersand ls.
One or the other.
Sorry?
It's either the semicolon or the ampersand.
My bad. Oh, the whole shebang. That was beautiful.
But that wouldn't work if you were still running it blind, right?
Yeah.
Big old bash code in there. Cats a file, splits it into 256 character chunks.
Do like
Does
4.
DNS lookups for every single chunk.
Exactly, it's going to do that. Yeah, so you can do a lot. Yeah, the message in this talk has been basically be worried about remote code execution vulnerabilities, even if you're running some really fancy, expensive security solution in your environment. It's important to pay attention to vulnerabilities, have your stuff tested, look for problems early in your code so that you don't end up victim to one of these attacks. And yeah, are there questions?
Sanitize all the stuff.
Sanitize all input, yeah, absolutely. Who has my flag? Has anybody got my flag?
Is it Vexel?
Huh?
That Vexilon file?
It's the contents of it.
Yeah, there you go.
You got it, Bryce?
Yeah.
Awesome.
APT1 get me here, I don't know who that is, but
You what?
APT1 seems to be there.
Who's APT1?
It's me.
Is that Matt?
Yeah, it's me.
Dang, way to go.
I'm CTO.
Cool, good work. All right, so I think that's my talk. Thank you guys so much.